Hey, do me a favor. Picture a salesperson in your mind real quick. What do you see? Do you see the plaid jacket, maybe someone kicking the tires on a used car? If you're only seeing a man, can you think twice about that? If you're only seeing an older person, can you think twice about that? See, a seller is someone that's there to help you. And that's what you want to see. Male, female, old, young. What barriers are we putting in place for others or for ourselves? Let's talk about that with Lauren Valentine of the Ruby Group next on Purpose Under Pressure. Well, the heat is on. Let's get cooking. This is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about people like you and me. We're business folks. We're organizational leaders. We're trying to make a difference in the sales world, revenue generation. We're trying to do the right thing. And we wake up in the morning, we swing our legs out of bed, we put our feet on the floor, we go get it. And ultimately, almost daily, maybe hourly, pressures come along and try to knock us off our path. And this podcast is about what happens when we want to overcome those pressures without giving up on our purpose. We don't want shortcuts. We don't want quick fixes. We want to do it right. Those pressures get strong, though, and that's what this show is all about. So thank you for coming back to it. If you are back and you've seen it before and you like it enough, do me a favor and like it or follow us or click that little thumb that says, yeah, thumbs up. This is cool. Maybe tell your mom or a friend or your son or daughter. Just let other people know this podcast exists. There's 1,000,000,001 podcasts out there. Why should someone listen to this one? Well, because you said so. And I do appreciate your support coming back, but also telling your friends so that we can expand this movement. Purpose Under Pressure is and always has been and will be for quite some time, brought to you by my friends at Sandler by the Ruby Group. They are serving sales professionals nationwide from Akron and Columbus, Ohio. They're also in Jacksonville, Florida. They're in Capital Region, upstate New York, which is what we're going to talk about today. And they provide sales training, revenue strategies, business growth for businesses that are trying to do things on purpose, for sellers that are trying to do things on purpose. They're not about gimmicks. They're not about tricks. They're not about, fancy closing conversations or reasons, ways to get someone to sign on the dotted line. They're about conversations. They're about win-win solutions that's going to help your business, but it's going to help your customer. That's what it's all about. If you can uncover that, you've done a job well done in sales, and that's what the Ruby Group is all about. You can check them out online at therubygroup.sandler.com. I've done these shows, Purpose Under Pressure shows, for 9 seasons now, and the best episodes have been the ones with trainers and partners from the Ruby Group. It makes sense. They've seen the pressure, they've overcome the pressure, and they're helping others to do it too. Today is one of those episodes. I'm excited for you to meet Lauren Valentine. She's a partner at the Ruby Group and in charge of leading the expansion into the entire state of New York and probably up and down that region. So, Lauren, welcome to Purpose Under Pressure.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really glad you're here. I'm glad you're there as well as you continue to build. I've known Mike and Ken and Jordan and Jason and the team for a long time, and I know they have a growth mindset that does not stop. It transfers to their customers. That growth mindset, that bulldog mentality of getting the right things done on purpose transfers to their customers, but it also helps them to grow. And I know Sandler by the Ruby Group, last I checked, was the second most successful Sandler sales training organization in the country. I imagine they still are and probably looking towards becoming number one, but you're a big part of that. So Lauren, thank you for all that you're doing for them.
Thank you. Yeah.
So tell us about that. It's not easy to start a brand new organization. Tell us what you're all about, what your purpose is, and kind of why you are excited to do what you do for the Sandler organization and the Ruby Group in particular. Brag a little bit. You've earned it, Lauren.
Sure. So, it kind of goes back to when I got started in sales. And I always like to tell people that I got into sales by accident. And I find that resonates with most sales professionals.
Yep.
And, early in my career, I was working for a small startup organization. The founder and owner was the primary salesperson at that time, and they were looking to build out a sales organization and add people to that team, but didn't have anyone yet. And I've always been a go-getter, going above and beyond, and just kind of by accident, I landed a new client for the organization. And so I quickly found myself then interviewing for an open sales position with that company. And I thought it was a great opportunity for growth at that time, but I also recognized that, it was a new experience for me. I didn't have any formal sales experience at that time in my career. And so that's when I originally found Sandler and went through the sales training program and found that it had a really big impact on my career and also personally in my life outside of sales as well. So, I quickly found myself just, like taking in everything that I was learning, applying it in meetings that I was having with prospects and clients, and having a lot of success. And that's actually what led to my first tenure at Sandler. I worked with a different franchise from 2015 to 2019 and really grew a lot during that time. Had the opportunity to work with business leaders and sales professionals who kind of shared that similar sentiment where they had gotten into sales by accident and
Accidentally.
kind of figured things out through trial and error, but didn't have any formal training. And so, working with people to help them put structure and process and, develop their skills around how they're selling professionally in a way that feels authentic to them really inspires me. And, I had a lot of fun doing it. I ended up leaving the Sandler organization in 2019. I had an opportunity with one of my clients to move into a sales leadership role, and I jumped at it. And I'm really excited to be back and, working with business leaders on, helping them to really drive revenue growth, but also build cultures that, people really want to be a part of.
And I think that's the key. You mentioned accidental, jumping into sales accidentally. I think the first sales book I ever read, probably mid 90s, early 90s, was called The Accidental Salesperson by Chris Lytle. It was game changing for me. It's like, yeah, this is the way I want to be. And since then, I've had an opportunity to maybe not teach, but talk to young people at schools and things on career paths, and they want to be sales. Some of them want to be sales. I say, what do you want to be about? Why do you want to do sales? Well, I want to make money. I think
Yeah.
if you're young and you want to be a salesman, you might want it for the wrong reasons. And I think when you are in the workforce and you accidentally fall into sales, it's because it really fits who you are, and it really makes a lot of sense and helps you, allows you to let that purpose shine through. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Tell me a little bit about the challenges of coming back to Sandler and to the Ruby Group and leading a franchise in a brand new location where people might not, here in Akron and Columbus, we all know Mike or Ken, right? It might be a little different for you out on your own, blazing a trail. Is that accurate?
Yes and no. I mean, I gained a lot of experience in my original tenure with Sandler that I carry with me now. I feel more confident in the work that I'm doing now because I'm further along in my career. The first time that I worked at Sandler, I was in my late 20s and I experienced a lot of ageism and,
Mm.
different things related to that where I would walk in to meet with clients and they would make comments like, you're the sales trainer, or I have fillings in my teeth older than you.
Like a
And
question, like, you're the sales trainer? Is that what you mean? Oh my gosh.
yeah,
That would put you at ease, wouldn't it?
yeah. And, it was really, an obstacle that I had to overcome at that time in my career was, helping business owners recognize that I was in my late 20s at the time, but I still was able to help them. And some people just are not comfortable working with someone who's 10 or 15 or 20 years younger than them, and I had to accept that. now coming back to Sandler, I've had firsthand experience in sales
Mm.
leadership. I've led a national sales organization, and I'm a lot further along in my career, and so I have more real world experience that I didn't have the first time, that I was with Sandler, that I'm able to take and, use that to help my clients.
So let's dive into that. Let's dive into some of those challenges of a sales trainer. And because, not just about sales training, but anyone who is out there listening that is in sales knows you have some, people already think, "Oh, I don't want to talk to the salesman," or I don't want to be sold, or they already, even before they've met you, they're putting together an image of who you are, and that you sometimes have to, disable before you can get anywhere. You and I talked a little bit before the show about some of the issues you mentioned just now, ageism. You also talked about the challenges that women have in the role of sales. And I'm really interested in that because I don't think of it that way, but I know it's real. I know
Yeah.
it's real. And I bet you it's never, ever, ever in our lifetimes going to completely go away. And as I think about it now, I don't know a lot of female salespeople. I know the trainers at Sandler have always been, I think, typically male, if I can think back, at least at the Ruby Group. And you go to these conferences and they're full of men,
Yeah.
right? Let's talk about that. What's it like being a female seller in today's day and age?
Yeah, I am a woman in a revenue generating role, and I work with a lot of women in revenue generating roles. And, it is interesting the comment that you made that, you don't necessarily think about it, because I find that that's true for a
Yeah.
lot of men who are in sales or responsible for revenue generation in some way, shape, or form. And it's not, I'm not picking on you when I say
No, no,
that,
no.
but
It's okay. I know my own issues. You can't let me know of anything I don't already know about how screwed up I am. It's okay. You go right ahead.
yeah, but it there are, and I don't share this from, a mentality of a victim either, really from a place of strength. And I think, recognizing that there are key differences in the experiences that we have as men versus women, and, different strengths that we bring, I think is, a way to empower us. But, you know, I will just say, like, I have talked to other men like you who, they're not thinking about it. They've made comments like, the best deals that I close are after hours. They're over dinner or at a late night, networking event, or at the hotel bar, after, the conference. And what they may not always be thinking about is that a lot of times those situations can be very uncomfortable for the women on their team, or for women in revenue generating roles. And I know from my own personal experience, and in, speaking with other women that I've worked with throughout my career, a lot of times if a male prospect or male client is asking to have a business dinner or meet after hours for happy hour, their intentions aren't necessarily about business.
Mm,
And,
that's right.
it can be a very uncomfortable situation. And I've worked with a lot of women who are not really sure how to navigate that, right? There's a lot of pressure on salespeople in general to meet their quota, to hit their numbers, etc., to, close a certain deal. And so, how do you navigate when those situations come up? You have all of these things going on in your head, like, I don't want to jeopardize the client relationship, or I don't want to miss out on this opportunity. But it can also be a very uncomfortable situation to be in. And, even networking, I've done a lot of networking throughout my career. And, I think sometimes that men don't necessarily realize that when women go to networking events, particularly, if you're single, you don't have, a wedding ring on your finger,
Mhm.
people at those networking events aren't always interested in talking with you about, professional related topics. And how do you navigate that and maintain, a level of professionalism, but also those personal boundaries and standards as well.
Well, we talk about that all the time in networking. We're not there to close a sale. We're not there to talk about sales. We're there to build a relationship and all those kinds of things. And so it's a very real. Let's assume for this conversation that there aren't any wrong intentions. Let's assume for this conversation that the buyer it really does just want to have a drink after work to talk, and that's how he does sales. And he doesn't, he's happily married. Right? He doesn't have any ill will. And let's also assume that the seller wants to do things right. It's
Hmm.
still a very uncomfortable situation. And
Yeah.
so, and again, I hadn't thought about it that way. Um,
Yeah.
but what should a female seller do? Let's not try to fix the buyer. What
Yeah.
should a female seller do to set the right boundaries, the fair boundaries, to allow that sale to continue, to allow that relationship to develop without making anything maybe more uncomfortable than it is? I think if the buyer does have ill intentions, that's a whole separate issue.
Yeah.
But if everything's on the up and up, how can we
Yeah.
make sure it doesn't get out of bounds?
I think we have a lot of tools and techniques at Sandler that really help with this. And, this is one of the areas that I'm really passionate about as a Sandler trainer in working with my clients is, bringing this perspective to help women who may be navigating some of these situations and offering that perspective. But one of the things that I think about is people are not meeting with their IT service provider over happy hour. People are not meeting necessarily to do their business accounting over happy hour. If something is truly important to the business, that buyer will find time to meet during business hours, right? In a professional setting. And so if you're calling on a prospect or you're calling on a client and they will only meet with you late at night, that is a red flag when you're thinking about qualifying that opportunity as to how serious they actually are. Because if they're willing and able to make time to meet with you during regular business hours, they're probably serious about working with you. And if they're not, it could be, that they have other intentions. I personally have always just said that I don't do happy hour meetings. I don't do late night dinners. I will do
Don't
them
do 'em.
with people that I have an established relationship with. I do them with my friends outside of work.
Mhm.
But, when it comes to selling, I'm not meeting with someone over happy hour or a late night, meeting as an initial meeting or, qualifying that opportunity. And if they can't find time to meet with me during the day, they probably never had any intentions of working with me anyway.
Let's so that I think that's excellent. Set up the hard line and be true to yourself and what you believe in. And if it's going to become a relationship worth having, that'll take care of itself. And that's obvious. I want to ask a sticky question though.
Okay.
And I do not mean any offense. This is just the way maybe that it also is. This is the other
Yeah.
side of it.
Yeah.
So I've been in situations as a sales manager before where my female salespeople
Yeah.
act differently, dress differently based on the customer they're going to see. And
Hmm.
I would quickly blame the customer as much for setting that expectation as I would the female seller for living up to it. But the female seller, this is how you mentioned in the air, we've got pressure, we've got quotas, we want to develop the relationship. It is acting differently in front of the male buyer than she would in front of a female buyer. How does a manager manage a team of male and female sellers
Hmm.
without crossing a line, but also to ensure that his people or her people are behaving properly and with the right amount of ethics and with the right amount of self-respect? Am I
Yeah.
asking this correctly?
Looking at the typical salesperson, everything they do day in and day out, if we simplify all of that and really boil it down, they have two superpowers. First superpower that salespeople have is how they behave. Second superpower they have is what they say. As a seller, we only have two problems. We either said something or did something that we should not have said or done, or we didn't say something or do something that we should have said or done.
How does a manager manage a team of male and female sellers without crossing a line, but also to ensure that his people or her people are behaving properly and with the right amount of ethics and with the right amount of self-respect? Am I
Yeah,
asking this correctly?
I think so. I mean, when I think about ethics, really, that is not like a gender specific issue.
True. That works both
Um,
ways. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
I think in sales, there is an element of, dressing to adapt to your client in the sense of, if I'm meeting with a financial institution and they're wearing suits, I will dress, much more formal than if I'm working with a client in, a blue collar industry where, they're wearing Carhartt, for example, or something like that, right? So, I think there is an element of, you want to match and mirror the dress code of your clients that you're meeting with. But when I think about, professionalism and dress code issues, that really is, it's an HR issue of like, what are the standards in that organization of, the dress code and, how people are looking to act. And, I've worked with a lot of women in my career, and I think what you're describing, not that it doesn't happen, but most of the women that I have worked with are not necessarily like, acting in a flirtier way or something
Right.
like that to try to win business. I've worked with a lot more women who feel like, they've been put in uncomfortable situations by something a prospect or a client has, said to them during a meeting or during an informal conversation. And, sometimes I think salespeople who have not had a lot of formal training, men and women, really feel like, their likability is the thing that closes sales. And, having that formal training and developing hard skills like how to ask questions that really qualify or disqualify an opportunity and, meet with the right people and keep control of the sales process and all of those things that we work on
All of
with
those
our
Sandler
clients.
things. Yeah.
Certainly relationships are important and, people do buy from people that they like, know, and trust. But, there are other hard skills that come into selling beyond just being likable.
Yeah, that's
So,
for sure.
that is often an indicator that someone maybe needs a little bit of some training, probably.
Yeah, and maybe even on both sides. But I've made decisions where I've changed relationships. I've put a different person into the spec, or just ended the relationship altogether, because
Yeah.
what's right is what's right always. It's never what's
Yeah.
right this time or what's right next time. It's always what's right. And if you ever find your people in a uncomfortable position, you need to fix that and help them to fix that. We talked a little bit about ageism. We talked now about the challenges that women have in the sales place, and I want to kind of combine that a little bit. I know that Sandler talks a lot about what's the equal stature,
Yeah.
right? Regardless of how much money the person across the table makes, or what their position is, or how old they are, or young they are, or what sex they might be. What are some of the tools that Sandler and the Ruby Group help sellers feel comfortable with, so that they can be welcomed at the table? Male, female, old, young, rich, poor, we're all in this together.
Yeah. I think about a lesson that I got very early in my career from a mentor of mine. And she was a Sandler trainer. And I had told her, I'm meeting with people, they're accepting a meeting with me, and I'm walking into the room and I know that they don't think that I'm credible, and they don't believe that I can help them. But the things that they've shared with me on the phone, prior to that meeting, are indicators that we could help them with sales training and coaching and consulting. And so, how do I get people to take me seriously? And she gave me some very real advice that has always stuck with me. And she said, you need to get over the fact that, they don't take you seriously. They're not going to when you walk in the room. And I think that that is true, sometimes for women who are in male dominated industries, or young professionals who are selling to people who are much older than them, or, anyone who feels like maybe they don't quite fit in that situation. And so you got to just get over it and accept the fact that people are not necessarily going to respect you when you walk into the room. But what she said to me was, they will respect you by the time that you leave, based on how you conduct that meeting. And most people, no matter what their title says or how much money they make, there are a lot of people that are just flying by the seat of their pants, and they're going from one meeting to the next, and they're not really taking a lot of time to prepare and necessarily be intentional. And I think that's true a lot of times as a sales professional. When you're meeting with a prospect, they don't necessarily think that there's a lot that they have to do necessarily to prepare for that meeting, because they expect that the salesperson's going to give them a lot of information, right? And so the key really is taking that time. And what she shared with me is, you have to work harder. You have to show up to those meetings more prepared than they are. And how you conduct that meeting is how you will earn that respect and equal stature. And that really goes back to the training that I had through Sandler, right? Things like, do I have a really rock solid upfront contract for this meeting? Have I prepared the questions that I need to ask of this prospect to figure out if, what their real issue is, and if it's something that we're qualified to help them with, and B, how important is it to them, and all of those questions that you need to ask to really qualify an opportunity and get people to think. But also, how are you dealing with objections that get thrown your way, and stalls that come up, or different things like that. And so I have always found that creating equal stature for me personally just really comes with my preparation for the meetings that I'm having, and knowing that, I'm not expecting someone to believe that I can help them when I walk into the room. And frankly, I might not even be the right fit to help them, and that's okay. But, how I conduct that meeting is how we're going to figure it out, and how I'm going to earn that respect by the time they leave.
I think that's key. I love sales because it's a problem to solve. It's an opportunity to make something happen that you can get in your own way if you're not doing it right. And I think what you're describing, maybe I can put it in different terms. If I already don't trust you because of my attitude towards age or female or whatever it might be, if I already don't think you can help me, and you start telling, excuse me, and you start telling me how you can help me, that's just an obvious roadblock. We're not going to get over that. I already
No.
don't think you can. You're telling me you can. I don't believe you in the first place. We're dead in the water. But
Yeah.
if you start asking me questions, if you start really digging in and finding out, and when you mentioned the upfront contract, it's one of my favorite tools, because when the buyer feels like he has all the cards, he also realizes he doesn't, and he loves it, or she loves it, when you say, look, here's the way we're going to do this meeting. Here's what we should expect. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's maybe what you're going to do. And here's how it's going to end. And
Yeah.
I've seen them so many times. I don't want to back away too much from the microphone, but they just sit back. It just feels so good to let someone else be in control. And when they do that, it means they trust you. You've overcome that hurdle in the middle. I don't mean to tell
Yeah.
you your job, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think too, like being disarmingly honest and being authentically yourself, right? Like, over the years, like I have just really come to terms with the fact that like I'm not a fit for everyone, and that's okay. And I don't need to work with everyone. I want to work with the right clients who are as committed to their growth as I am, and who see value in that trusted partnership. And I think when you give people permission in that upfront contract of hey, we're here today to figure out if there's a good fit for us to even work together, and there might not be, and if I feel that way, I'm going to let you know, and if you feel that way at any point, it's okay to tell me that. I think that disarming honesty really like sets people at ease, but it also comes out in other ways too. Like I'm not changing my personality of who I am when I meet with a prospect, and I'm not trying to be someone that I'm not. And if I'm in a meeting where I feel like they're giving me a lot of stalls or objections, like I will call that out. I had like 10 years ago, I had a prospect who said to me, I have fillings in my teeth older than you. And I stood up and I said to him, I appreciate you sharing that with me.
Yeah, nice to know. Thank you. I'd rather not see
And
them, but okay, go
yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
And I said, it's very clear based on what you've shared with me so far that, the challenges that you're looking to address in your business are areas that we are qualified to help you with. But it's also very clear to me based on the questions that you're asking me and, the tone of this meeting that I'm not someone that you want to work with. And so I'm not going to sit here for another 45 minutes and pretend like we're both not feeling this. I'm just going to respectfully see myself out and like take that pressure off of both of us. And I hope you find another solution. And I think they were so shocked that I
Spin it
did
around.
that.
Yep.
Like I got in my car and I drove away.
Oh, you did?
They called me 5 minutes later, apologized, brought me back in, and ended up becoming a great client
Oh
that
my
I worked
gosh.
with.
Love that. I was expecting to say that he was just, oh no, I didn't mean it. They actually let you leave. He was
Yeah, it
testing
was,
you. He was
but
testing you.
but I think, we have those moments like you're talking about pressure, right? Like you have to stay true to
Yes,
yourself.
you do.
And, it boils down to
Good for you.
like, if someone's putting you in a situation where you feel uncomfortable or you feel like this prospect just really doesn't want to work with you, like call it out and say it. Like be real with them. If you're asking your prospects and clients to be real with you, then you need to be real with them too.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength, but that's what purpose is. And I love that you brought it back to that because that's what we're talking about. I'm trying to do this thing and I'm going to do it this way. They don't always want you to or think they want you to, and they've got better ideas, and that's called pressure. I knew I could talk to you forever. We're already running long. It's
Oh my
fascinating to
goodness.
me how people handle sales and things of that sort. I'd like to uh, I'd like for you to, I'm not looking for a 60-second sales commercial, but I'm wondering if someone's listening that is wondering to themselves, geez, this sounds interesting. I never even thought about getting up and walking out of a sale. This sound, Lauren's speaking about things that are resonating with me. What type of a person and what kind of things is that person going through right now that they might say right now, this is a red flag. I ought to call someone, maybe even Lauren. What kind of person can you really help and what are they going through right now?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we've talked about really does come back to equal stature. And another thing that I think about with equal stature as a sales professional is, it's really having that ownership mentality of, doing what's right for both the client and the organization. And, having the courage to, say things or walk away from opportunities that are not the right fit so you can focus on more of the opportunities that are the right fit.
Mhm.
And so, a lot of the clients that we work with are business owners, they're sales leaders, they're, in some sort of, leadership role where they are responsible for revenue generation in their organization. And, they're looking at what's happening and they're seeing that, maybe my pipeline looks great, but, it's not, it's never accurate. Or, we're having deals that are kind of getting stuck in the middle of that pipeline and, they're not moving forward to a yes or a no. Our sales cycle is dragging on a lot longer than it should. Or, we're discounting margins in order to, win business instead of selling, at the full profit margins, that we ideally want to. And, they're looking within their teams and they probably have really great people on their teams. But that is an opportunity where we can come in and help them, from a structure and process standpoint, look at how they're getting in front of new opportunities, how they're retaining and expanding the existing clients or accounts that they have, how they're, moving opportunities through that, sales process to create stronger forecasting and more accuracy, but also helping to develop the skills and the confidence within their people. Because you can learn a new skill, but if you don't have the confidence to execute it, then it's not going to happen. Or a person will try it and it doesn't sound authentic to them, right? So it all comes together with, not just the structure and process and skills, but also really helping to develop the culture and the confidence within that sales organization, or really frontline teams as well. When we think about revenue generation, it's not just salespeople that are responsible for that. You have frontline teams, you have service technicians, you have, all sorts of people within your organization that are interfacing with prospects and clients that play some role in, the overall health of the organization.
And if it's not going well, we blame marketing.
Right.
Right. If it's not going well, it's not my fault. It's marketing. Yeah, I know that's not true, but that's the way some people think of it. So, folks, if you're listening to this show and you're watching this show, you can see why I'm so proud that Sandler by the Ruby Group is my partner with this. They really believe it. They really understand it. It's down deep in their core. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the position that they're in. And Lauren has shown that that's exactly the case in for her. If someone wanted to reach out, Lauren, and I hope that they will, if they wanted to find you to see, if what you're talking about here and how you can help them, how would they do that?
A few different ways. Email is always great. It's lauren.valentine@sandler.com. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn. That's another great way to get a hold of me as well.
Excellent. And I hope people will. And folks, if you're listening to Lauren, you're like, wow, she really gets it. I will tell you this. There's an episode every season from a Sandler trainer, all the way back through the 8 previous seasons to now. There's Ken Guest, and there's Mike Jones, and there's Jason Reynolds, and there's Matt Rocco, and there's just so many different points of view that you're going to see. If you even watch a few of them, you're going to see these people are all cut from the same cloth. They're ethical, they're honest, they're driven, they're passionate. And they want the very best for other people, and that's the definition of purpose. And I love it. So, Lauren, good luck blazing the trail in Capital Region, New York.
Thank you. I feel like we could have talked forever.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me.
We certainly could have, and I knew that was going to be the case. And we'll talk again, and we'll see how you're doing out there, and what's changing in the world. We're not going anywhere, and I know you aren't either. So stay on purpose and keep battling that pressure. Thank you for helping other people do the same.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Folks, that's Lauren Valentine. She's a partner at the Ruby Group, Sandler, right here in Ashland, or in Akron, and in Columbus, and in Jacksonville, Florida. And she is leading the charge in Capital Region, New York. I hope you'll reach out to one of those locations and see. I tell you this right now. I'll give another blurb. If you just call and talk to one of the trainers, Lauren or Mike or any of the ones that I talked about, if you just talk to them quickly, it'll be the best phone call you've made all day. You're going to learn something. You may not be a fit. You may not want to spend any money with them. I don't know. But I will tell you that it's going to be the best call you make, because they're going to share something that's going to make sense, and it's going to trigger something for you that's going to help you do the next right thing. I promise you that. And I also promise you they're not going to try to sell you anything. I think they're so busy, you're going to have to earn a place at the table. So go ahead and make that call. You can check them out online at therubygroup.sandler.com. And I thank you very much, Lauren, and the rest of your team for being a part of Purpose Under Pressure. It's brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group. Sellers are under pressure to perform, and Sandler helps you to succeed on purpose. You'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. We do this every week, and we will see you next time on Purpose